Welcome to the Private Practice Startup Podcast, where we help ambitious private practitioners across the globe to brand themselves and grow their dream practices. We chat with successful private practitioners, business coaches, and marketing experts, bringing you tons of practice building ninja tips. Visit privatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and our signature marketing e-course. Here are your co-hosts, Dr. Kate Campbell and Katie Lemieux.
Hey, Startup Nation. Welcome back to another episode of Up Close and Personal, where we get up close and personal with your fave practice building experts. And we kind of put them on the hot spot and get to know a little bit about them, where we put the business chat aside. This is actually our third series. So if you guys had missed our first two, you'll definitely want to go back and check that out. But before I introduce today's guest, who you guys nominated and voted for, we hope that you guys listened last week. Or actually yesterday, as we interviewed Samara Stone, and what a joy and pleasure that was. So she was our up close and personal guest last time. If you are landing on our podcast for the first time, we're so glad that you're here. We'll welcome you to our Startup Nation superhero family. And as any good family, we give gifts. So we would love to give you guys a gift. Head on over to privatepracticestartup.com. Head on over to the resources tab. You'll see a lot of freebies, but I'd love to point out to you guys the free HIPAA form that is attorney approved and completely customizable. Whether we like it or not, we definitely need to have paperwork. Even though it's a love-hate relationship, might as well grab a HIPAA form for free. So today's guest is none other than Marissa Lawton. Marissa is a licensed counselor who also happened to graduate from a top 20 business schools. She's a corporate trained strategist and online marketing whisperer who lights up helping fellow clinicians repurpose and repackage their clinical skills. Welcome, Marissa.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. This is like my favorite place.
You're like our third time guest. So we have like Ernesto, Laura Long. Y'all are in like the running of the most numbers of appearances on our podcast.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, we are excited to kind of hear more about you and your story today, and kind of go from there. So we always take a step back in time. So get in your time machine, and we're going to travel back to the year whenever you were born. You could divulge or not.
1987.
All right, 1987. So share with us a little bit about your upbringing. Where did you grow up? Who's in your family system?
Yeah, ooh. I had asked before we started recording if I was going to need tissues. And I might be the first crier we have. So I was born in a really cool town called Prescott, Arizona. It's spelled Prescott, and we can always spot the tourists because they're walking around like, oh, Prescott is so pretty. But we know if we're natives that it's Prescott. And it's one thing to be like a native of this town because everybody moves to Arizona, much like Florida. Everybody moves to Arizona from somewhere else to get out of the snow or whatever. So it's kind of a badge of honor to be a Prescott native. And I am one. My parents are from the Midwest. My dad was born in Chicago and my mom was born in Milwaukee. So they actually grew up 80 miles from each other and then had to move across the country to meet each other. It's kind of funny. They met at a bar outside of Arizona State called The Library. So they would lie to their parents and say that they were at the library. And so that's where they met. And they spent a good 10, 15 years in the Valley, which is Phoenix, Arizona. Had my older sister. Her name is Angie. She has a PhD in anthropology, very cerebral, intellectual, admirable person. She does like she does archaeological digs and stuff. Her field work is in Peru, and she studies aesthetics. So like there's no accounting for taste. One thing that happens to artisans in Peru is they're making art in these bright, bold colors that we typically think of when we think of South America, when actually their indigenous colors are grays and blacks and more neutrals. So how tourist demand has changed their art is one of the things that she studies. It's really cool. She's 10 years older than me. And then I have a middle sister. Her name is Lisa. Lisa is fascinating. She left home at 15 and lived in a van. I'm not kidding you. Like, her and her friends lived in a Ford Econoline. They took all the like seats out and they turned it into like a old Volkswagen bus. She's like a total modern day hippie, I guess you could say. And now she works for and writes for this publication called Overland Journal, which is basically living off the land and traveling full time and all of this stuff. So she like started her path at 15 and just knew what she was kind of meant for and has done it ever since. So it's really kind of cool.
Wow.
You guys have a really cool family.
Yeah, lots of drama, and my parents actually divorced when I was 5. It was a super messy, ugly divorce. And so even though like we all loved each other, there was like choosing sides, and we weren't without like our drama and stuff too, especially with Angie being 10 years older. And she's smack in the middle of, Gen X, and I'm an elder millennial, I guess is what they're calling us now. So even our perspectives are just totally different. And then like she was 15 when my parents divorced and I was 5 when my parents divorced. So just totally different, stages of development, stages of life. So that has kind of caused rifts with us in the past of just, we see things totally different. And then my middle sister, of course, is in the middle of all of that.
So what was that like for you being a child of divorce, a messy divorce? And of course, I'm sure what people are wondering if that influenced you to getting into therapy, but you went into marketing and business first. So,
So that's a really great question. I think it impacted me in 2 ways. So being the youngest daughter of 3, it's funny, like my dad has actually since passed away, but he would never in a million years have called himself a feminist. However, he raised me and my sisters like there was no difference in the fact that we were girls. We could do anything, be anything, all of that kind of stuff. And so I was, and granted, this is rural Arizona, so I was shooting guns, working on cars, doing all these typical things that boys would do or whatever, if we want to go heteronormative stereotypes. But, I was raised just to be able to do anything. It didn't matter that I was a girl. And so I was actually daddy's girl. My dad, he worked in mutual funds, financial investments, financial planning. And so that, I think, is one of the reasons that I went into business, is because that's what my daddy did. But also the flip side of that is I was raised by a single mom. And so seeing money be a problem all the time. Like I can distinctly remember, I must have been 8, the washing machine breaking and my mom like freaking out. Like, we can't pay to buy another washing machine. Are we going to pay somebody to fix this washing machine? And it was something that was like essential. Like, we needed clean clothes. It wasn't like the vacuum broke or something that we could have gone without for a while. And that also, I think, is one of the reasons that I went into business, because it was, how do I control money? How do I make money? How do I not repeat this same situation that I was raised in? And I think that was one of the big reasons that I went into business as well.
Interesting. I'm always curious about people's money story and where that comes from, and then how that works down from the generations and impacts the next. So very interesting.
Yeah.
Before we were closest to in your family.
I'm sorry, what?
I was just saying, who are you closest to in your family?
Oh, goodness. My mom, because my sisters are, 6 and 10 years older than me, and Lisa left so young when she was 15. So I was only 9. So even though I'm a youngest child, I have a lot of oldest child traits, like when we look at birth order and all that fun stuff, because it was just me and my mom for so long. I do feel fortunate because a lot of times after divorce, kids don't have relationships with the other parent. A lot of times if it's the dad, but I did. I saw my dad every other weekend, and I would say up until my teen years, I think I was closest with my dad. And then in my teen years, I became close with my mom. My dad, and my mom says this happened with my sisters too, but once we weren't kids anymore, my dad had kind of like a hard time with that. like his daughters being seen as like adult women. So it happened with both my sisters, and we still were close, but when I got into my teen years, I definitely got closer with my mom.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And you mentioned your dad had passed away. When did he die?
So he passed away 10 days before my oldest daughter was born. So yeah, he smoked like 2.5 packs a day. He would light a cigarette with another cigarette. And that's also something like, you can call it intuition, you can call it whatever, but I knew I would lose my dad young. I just knew. I mean, when I would watch his lifestyle, I was like, there's no way. So he passed away when he was 65 from lung cancer. And it really wasn't much of a surprise. Like, as terrible as that sounds, like, you're mourning your parent, but it was just like, all right, well, I've been expecting this for the last 15 years, you know? But what I do feel fortunate about was he was there for my entire pregnancy. So even though he was doing chemo and wasn't feeling well, he still sent me like a Mother's Day gift. He still we did our gender reveal virtually because we're a military family. So we were thousands of miles away from most of our family. So he watched our gender reveal virtually and found out she was going to be a girl, and he made fun of her name. He hated her name. But he was at least knew she was coming.
And your oldest daughter's name is?
Sawyer.
But why did he hate Sawyer?
I don't know. He was like, that's so silly. Like, he just was like, why doesn't she have I guess maybe he wanted her to have a girlier name or like a more appropriate name. I don't know. I never really asked. He would just tease me about it.
Marissa, thanks so much for sharing that. I mean, I can't even imagine going through 2 major life transitions, the death of your father, and then 10 days later, your first child being born. Like, that is such an emotional time. And, a lot of times, obviously, when people are chronically ill or terminally ill, like, you start to go through the grieving process when that's happening. And what a tumultuous, like, up and down time as you're getting excited for your first daughter to be born and, knowing that your dad's going to pass.
We actually had 3 losses. So in May, within like a week of each other, I lost my grandfather and Josh lost his grandmother. And then my father passed away in August. And I don't know, I kind of like, maybe it's me trying to make meaning of it, trying to make meaning of the grief, but I'm not shy to say that Sawyer was born with health concerns. And when her diagnoses came about, doctors were flabbergasted because textbook what her diagnosis was she should have been completely blind. She should have been this, that, like a lot of different things. And honestly, like most pediatricians, they don't even notice anything with Sawyer. I have to advocate to get her, like every time we move, I have to be like, no, she needs this service and this service. And they're like, why? They don't even notice. So I like to kind of explain to myself, like, because we lost those 3 significant people, something about, I don't know, the transfer of their energy or something, like, or, you can take it a faith place or whatever, but like they were looking out for her. And here's the tears. She is okay because of those losses. You know what I mean? I don't know. Yeah. That's just how I explain it to myself.
Yeah. And wow. So important that meaning and that meaning that you make out of it. And thanks so much for being just so vulnerable and sharing and, really demonstrating what the up close and personal is really about. You know what I mean? Let's just take a quick moment for our sponsor. Tired of never quite feeling comfortable with your practice financials? I'd like you to meet Green Oak Accounting. Their goal is to empower private practice owners with the financial information they need to make good business decisions. They specialize in working with solo and group private practices in the mental health industry, so they're uniquely positioned to help with figuring out what's normal in your business finances and what's not. So if you've ever had a conversation with your accountant or bookkeeper that left you wishing that they understood private practice or had some best practices to share, head on over to greenoakaccounting.com and schedule a free consultation to see if they might be a good fit for you. They can help you with all your accounting needs from bookkeeping to payroll to profit first and budgeting as well as forecasting. Also, check out their new podcast, Therapy for Your Money, where Julie Harris talks about all things money, finance for private practice.
When you're in private practice, it can be tough to find the time to review your marketing efforts, let alone make improvements when they're needed. Whether you're a seasoned clinician whose current website needs to be revamped or a new therapist building a website for the first time, Brighter Vision is here to help. By understanding your business and what makes it unique, Brighter Vision's team of designers then uses this information to create a custom website catered to your specific marketing goals. Better yet, every website includes professional search engine optimization to make sure you get found in online searches, as well as unlimited technical support so your website can change and grow along with your practice. The best news of all, listeners of the Private Practice Startup Podcast get $100 off any new website. To get started, head on over to brightervision.com/PPS. Again, that's brightervision.com/PPS.
So since we're talking about your firstborn, let's talk about your kids.
Yeah. So I have Sawyer is my oldest. She's 6. And then we have a 3-year-old named Logan. And so, thinking about my dad, he obviously knew that Sawyer was coming, but he couldn't have known about Logan. So that kind of is another little heartbreaker there that, that happened after such a significant turning point in your life.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm so, I don't know. I just love the names. They're so unique. Sawyer and Logan. How did you come up with the names for your girls?
So Sawyer is named after a character on Lost.
Oh, after Sawyer. That's so funny. I know exactly who that is.
Yeah. And so, just in case they didn't like the kind of androgynous or boy names, we gave them kind of girly middle names. So she is Sawyer McKenna. And then Logan, I knew I wanted to kind of keep with this tradition of more androgynous or masculine kind of names for them. So we just made a list of all kinds of boy names that we liked. I actually really liked Ryan, but Josh has a cousin who's a girl whose name is Ryan. And so I didn't want to do that. Other ones that we liked Blake, we liked Brett, but we ended up with Logan. And then her middle name is Amberly.
Beautiful names. I love them.
Thank you.
It's interesting when Kate and I were interviewed, Chrissy Barlahan had asked Kate if she could choose one word to describe each of her children, what would it be? So we're going to ask you that. What's their essence?
Oh my gosh. They're night and day. And it's hard to get it down to one word.
A few. It's fine.
Yeah. Sawyer is really coming out of her shell. I'd say after she turned 5.5, she really came out of her shell because she used to be real shy, real quiet. Now in kindergarten, her teacher said she was like the social butterfly, and Josh and I both were totally caught off guard. But she is kind. She's just kind-hearted. Logan, this is terrible. I either say she's going to be like the next Hitler or the next Mother Teresa because she's going to change the world. I just can't tell if it's for good or for bad yet. If I tell her the stove is hot, she's like, "Oh yeah, Mom, watch me put my hand right on it." Anything that you tell this child, she will go and purposely do the opposite and look you in the eye and smile while she's doing it. So she's a challenge, and I don't want to tame her. That's not exactly at all what I want to do, but I would love her to be just a little bit more reasonable, where we could talk through things, and then, if you're still going to make the crazy ass decision, that's fine, but at least understand the consequences of that decision. So I would say wild in the best way.
Marissa, we're just curious, what's life been like for you during the pandemic? How have you guys been managing? And where are you at now?
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys have seen those memes going around. There's 2 that I thought was really funny. The first one was military spouses having their plans ruined by the government before it was cool. So, we are used to having orders come down of what we can and can't do, where we can and can't go. Some countries all of a sudden we can't travel to or whatever simply because of being soldiers. Or my husband being a soldier. When soldiers are stationed in certain places of Germany, they're told they're not supposed to fly American flags and things like that. So we've always had these rules that we've lived by. So that part was kind of like, oh, okay, another thing. But then I saw another meme going around the internet early on in like March or April about talking about something like online business owners, everybody, and they're like, welcome to my life. Because literally before we started staying home, I would drive the kids to school. Sawyer would get out of the car. I'd wave to the teacher. I didn't like get within 6 feet of her. And then I would take Logan over to daycare and same thing. I'd like drop her off and be like, bye, honey. And I'd like see people. And then I'd come home and I'd sit at my computer and work all day. And then it would be time to go get them. So really, my life didn't change that much. Like what I did on a daily basis didn't really change. And so I felt so fortunate, like not having to pivot my business, not having to make a lot of changes in that regard, actually having more demand for what I do because of the pandemic. And I know that I feel so privileged for that because that's not the case for everybody. What changed, however, was having everyone home with me. So like trying to maintain my days, trying to maintain my habits, my patterns, my rituals with 3 other people at home.
That must have been tough, as it's been tough for so many. But one of the interesting things is you have always been hiding in the closet, though, when you're on a podcast or something really important. So that wasn't new to you.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like mostly my life kind of kept going. It was just, how do I keep this going now that there's more people in the mix? What was nice is the Army sent Josh home for 9 weeks. So we really had a cool like lockdown. And I know, again, not the experience for everybody, but we got to really see what it would look like after he got out of the Army, because he plans to be an entrepreneur as well. And so we were like in our backyard playing in the blow up pool that we were fortunate to get like the last one at Walmart, because that was one thing that people bought right away was pools. But it was like we could be in our backyard or we could be in freaking Thailand or Tahiti or wherever and just maintain exactly what we're doing now. And so it was kind of a cool thing to see about what was possible with having online businesses and not having to like report to a job. So actually it was coming out of lockdown that was more anxious, gave me more anxiety than going in, because then all of a sudden it was the kids can't go back to school, but now Josh is back at work. And then it was me for about 3 or 4 weeks before daycare opened again, figuring out how to do it all, like basically like a single mom. That was the hardest part around June, where I still had obligations for my business, and yet I didn't have a partner there helping me at that time.
Interesting.
How did you manage all of that?
Oh, I don't know that I did. I think we just got through every day. We just woke up every day and just got through it. There were certain times where Josh would just have to leave work early. Like I had a meeting or I had a webinar or I was recording or something, right? And so Josh would just have to leave early. I also had to shift my entire schedule from I'm most productive in the mornings, but now when he was back at work, I was working from like 2 p.m. to 9 p.m, which is not my best time, but it was just what I had to do. So I missed dinners for a few weeks, and we were really doing like shifts, right? Like I'll have them from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m, and then you'll have them from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. And so we kind of were able to just split it is the best way that we could do it.
Gotcha. And I'm curious to know a little bit about how you met your husband. But before we do that, let's take a quick break for our next sponsor.
If you've ever felt lost trying to find great people for your business, you need to try Wise Hire. They're an online recruiting system that makes the hard parts of hiring, like making ads, posting to job boards, and tracking candidates fast and easy. Plus, they're super affordable. We love that their DISC personality assessment helps you find exactly who you're looking for. We know it's tough to juggle all you do, and hiring the right way can be a full-time job. With Wise Hire, it feels like someone's with you, supporting you every step of the way. Their team lives and breathes their mission of both helping you hire and helping teams create fulfilling careers and happy lives. And that's something we really believe in. Right now, they're offering a free strategy session to the private practice startup listeners. If you're thinking about growing your practice, you got to get on this call. They are the experts on building amazing teams from the ground up. Start hiring or book your free strategy session today at wisehire.com/PPS. That's Wisehire, WIZEHIRE.com/PPS.
So tell us how you met Josh, and were you looking for a military spouse, or did you meet at the library?
No, we didn't meet at the library. He was actually my boss at my first job. So Josh and I dated when I was 16 and he was 19. And then he joined the Army when he turned 20. So my senior year, he went to the Army, and then I went to college to undergrad. And we kind of did the off and on thing for a long time. I dated other people. He dated other people. And it's funny because the military was a big contention for us when he left. And then anybody I dated after him was in the military. I dated 2 Marines, and I dated another soldier in the Army. And Josh was furious. He's like, this is one of the main reasons we broke up. And yet now here you are dating everybody else in the military. But it's crazy. And for people who are civilians, like are not military families, it sounds really crazy. But for people in the military, these stories are so common. But we were in an on again period for about a year, and he got orders to Alaska. And before he had been in Texas. And so it was like a 2-hour flight, and we could definitely fly back and forth at least once a month. And with Alaska, it's like $1,000 flight. It's a 15-hour flight, and there was not going to be any long distance. And so we took our parents to Texas Roadhouse, and we told them we were getting married. And it's so funny because Josh's dad is like the biggest introvert in the world. And he was the one that was most vocal in support of us. He was like, it's about damn time. Like, you guys have been doing this on again, off again dance for like 6 years now. But my mom was like very, very vocal, not against it, but just like, holy crap, is this the right decision? So it was funny.
And clearly it is, because y'all are still together, 2 kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our 10-year anniversary. Well, so we have 2, right? So we have 2 anniversaries, which is really common in the military. We signed our wedding license in February so that I could go to Alaska. So I would be allowed to go on post. So I would be allowed to like sign documents if Josh needed somebody to sign for them and all of that stuff. So literally just like an on paper, like legal kind of marriage. And then in September, we had a wedding for our friends and our family and all of that. So September 25th is our 10-year anniversary.
Oh, that's coming up. So happy anniversary.
Thank you.
I'm curious, how long were you guys in Alaska, and what was life like there?
Oh, so we were in Fairbanks, which is like right in the middle of Alaska. And so what's interesting about Fairbanks is it gets really, the temperatures fluctuate a lot. So we actually had 80 and 90 degree days in the summer, but in the winter we'd get down to like -40, -50.
Wow.
Yeah. And I moved,
oh my gosh.
I moved from Phoenix in March or February. Well, yeah, we signed our license February 25th, and then I moved up 2 weeks later. So I guess it was March. I left Phoenix in March. So it was already 80, and landed in Fairbanks, and it was -20. So it was like, it was not fun. And we're driving around Fairbanks, and we have to get stuff for my cat, because I just brought this cat on a 15-hour flight. And so I'm like, okay, we need cat litter. Things are really expensive in Alaska. So we went to Petco, and cat litter was like $27. And I was like, okay, let's go to Target, because I think it's cheaper there. And the lady in Petco looks up, she's like, there's no Target here, honey. And I was like, what did you get me into? It's -20 and there's not even a Target. Like, it was insane. And so this is like the impetus. The reason I found like mental health counseling, and the reason I went the way I went, is because I had been working at like Big 4 accounting firms and, mutual fund firms. And there was one credit union in Fairbanks. And so I was like, am I going to go be a teller? Like, after I've been doing like these investment portfolios for people, and it just didn't make any sense. So I just kind of started like poking around and looking at what I really wanted to do. I read a book called The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. And it had one exercise where it said, what have you done since you were a child that you continue to do today? And it was like talking people through difficult situations. People, even in elementary school, would come to me, what should I do about this? What should I do about that? And all that stuff. So that was like the catalyst.
Very cool. And then where did it go from there?
So Josh deployed from Alaska and went to Afghanistan. And so I got my master's while he was in Afghanistan. I did it online because I actually moved back to Arizona and back to Alaska in that time because I was not about to stay up there with him not there. So I got my master's online, and then we came to Georgia and I finished all my practical and internship and all of that stuff when we got to Georgia. So,
how many times have you guys moved in the past 10 years together?
So we went to Alaska, over to Georgia. So we went to Alaska. I went back to Arizona while he went to Afghanistan, and then back to Alaska. And then Georgia, Texas, and now we're at the same location in Georgia, but we actually live on the Alabama side because it's right on the border. So we're back at Fort Benning, but we live in Alabama this time.
Gotcha. That's a lot of moving. As you're going back and forth, I like lost you as you're talking. I'm like, oh.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so there's another reason why I went to coaching instead of therapy, because this was before online therapy and reciprocity and all of it was like really big and really even possible. And so when we left Georgia to go to Texas, I was going to have to do more hours. I was going to have to do more schooling and all of this stuff. And it didn't make sense for me to try and maintain my license every time we moved, knowing that it would be every 18 months.
Wow. I'm curious, how did you become such an awesome marketing Maven guru?
Yeah. So my undergrad is in finance and marketing. And so I always had like 2 internships. So I interned at Mass Mutual, a financial institution, and I interned at Moses Anschel, which is a really prominent advertising agency in Phoenix. So a lot of our customers were actually from LA, and they didn't want to pay LA advertising prices, so they would come and advertise with us. So we had some really huge national campaigns go through that office. And so that was one thing. And then while I was doing like financial investments and things, I always dabbled in either inter office marketing, like creating newsletters and things for the agency. And also I would go out and do recruiting fairs for people to come work. So I was selling the company when I was going and doing college, like job fairs and recruiting fairs and that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. And what were growing up, what were some of your hobbies and interests?
So when I was real young, I would literally climb up. My closet had this like shelf at the top. So there's like the bar where your clothes hung, and then there was a shelf above that. I would climb up on that shelf and drag a book and a blanket with me. And something about just being like cozy in this little like nook and reading these books. That was one of my favorite things. And I remember this book that I had that it was like the world religions. And so I was reading about like Hinduism and Buddhism and Islam and all of these things when I was like 7 years old. And so those are 2 things, just spirituality and like reading, I say, were things that have stuck with me since from a really early age.
How interesting. Did someone like introduce you to that, or that's just something you found?
I think it was just a book I got for my birthday or a book that I got for Christmas. I also had this Teach Me French book and a cassette tape, right? That I would listen to over and over again, and I would like rewind and then flip the tape over and play it again. And so I was like speaking French when I was like 7 and reading books about religion.
You must be an old soul girl.
I know. Well, I think my mom had me when she was 35. My aunts were all older. My sisters were all older. And so it was like they were kind of getting me things that they thought were cool, like for gifts or like introduce. I listened to the Grateful Dead and the Beatles, and like the music that I listened to growing up was, made in the 60s and 70s. And I just think it's because I had so many older influences in my life.
That's so interesting. You know what, when you were talking about your husband and how you guys met, I forgot to ask you, where was the job that you guys were working at when you met? Had to ask.
Yeah, a movie theater. So in Arizona, there's a chain of movie theaters called Harkins. And so he was the manager and I was just a concession person. And I actually got him fired for fraternization because I was like, oh, Mr. Lawton, he's my boyfriend. And then the higher ups heard and they're like, you can't date an employee. And
so he legit got fired?
Yeah, well, he got removed from the theater in Prescott and then had to go back to the theater in Sedona, which is a town that's close to where I'm from.
That's funny. I know before we hit record, we were talking about your program, Side Hustle, and very much like we believe, you also really believe in, building a business that really fits in your life. What's some of the advice that you give people on really how to create a lifestyle business?
Yeah, I think that hits the nail on the head because as we were talking, I was realizing how many of the life events have been what really has led me to not only build a business like this, but teach others how to build a business like this. Because at first it was staying home with Sawyer because she had all these doctor's appointments and all these specialists we had to run to. And then it was figuring out how I was still going to be a helper and use these skills that I had, even though I was moving across country every 18 months. And so all of those have really kind of been these markers in my path, so to speak, of just kind of guiding me. And I think the first and most important thing to do, and the hardest thing to do, is just stay true to your values. What are the relationships that matter the most to you? What are the things like spirituality or, your hobbies or your self-care, which therapists don't do enough of anyway. But making sure that those are always accounted for, and then building your business after you've filled your own cup.
I love that. And it's so important. I know Kate and I, we always talk about this, how we did it completely opposite. And so many people do.
Yeah.
Kate, well, actually, did you share something this weekend, Kate, that Marissa posted about Align Hustle?
Yes.
Yeah, that's from Marissa.
I loved this post that Marissa shared in her group this weekend. And I shared it in our group as well and tagged you on it because it was all about, not hustling, but really being more in alignment with your values and what's most important to you.
Mm-hmm. I do believe that there are seasons of hustle, right? You have a goal that you want to meet by December. Let's set some parameters. Let's set some benchmarks to knock that goal down. But let's make sure that those benchmarks are set up with time for your family, with energy for this or whatever is important to you included. And there are weeks where you might have a really long week, but making sure that's balanced with, giving time and energy and effort to the other things.
So important. So before we move into the lightning round, two kind of last questions. One is people want to know, how do you stay inspired and motivated? And on the flip side of that, when self-doubts and fear creep in, how do you deal with that?
I think I stay inspired and motivated by the people that I'm serving, right? With my audience, I'm always asking what they need, what they feel, what they're experiencing, what they want. And then to me, it's my purpose. My goal is to take that information and match it to my skill set and serve them as best that I can, right? So this idea of hustle, this idea of alignment, of not having a lot of time, but wanting to reach a big goal, I was like, well, I can help with that. And so I figured out how I could uniquely guide my people. So they are honestly what keeps me inspired and motivated.
Nice. And then how do you deal with some of the self-doubts or fears that creep in?
The first thing that popped in my head was not well.
I thought you were going to say something like chocolate. I don't know. Yeah,
well, that too. I don't drink, so it's not wine, but definitely chocolate. I think what I have come to find is some really key people that I depend on. One of them is Leisha McDonough. She is fabulous, and she teaches therapists how to be really, really good coaches. She is just all about only teaching coaching. And I swear 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was Voxing her every day. Voxer is a walkie-talkie app that we use every day. Like, oh, this is so hard, or this is coming up, or whatever. And so having those 1 or 2 key people is just huge to me. I have Lee, who's like my business best friend. I have my business coach, and then I have my therapist, right? And between those 3 people sharing all the stories and all the stuff, like I need support. I am not the person who can do it all by myself. I'm just not.
Mm-hmm. Well, we all do, right? And I love that you have your kind of team, and that's so important. Yeah. Nice. Let's move on over to the lightning round, where we just kind of shoot off random silly questions and you just answer as fast as you can.
Okay.
All right. What's one of the silliest things you've ever done?
Oh, geez. I was singing at a talent show in 8th grade, and I messed up and I said shit right in front of the microphone.
What's your biggest pet peeve?
People not doing what they say they're going to do.
Ooh, that's a good one. Integrity is a big one for me. Yes. What is one of your favorite drinks?
Honestly, I drink like 100 ounces of water every day. I really, really try and stay hydrated. If I'm not drinking water, this is Dawn Chorus Tea by Mountain Rose Herbal. They're in Oregon, and they're these organic tea growers. I have a few of their different blends, and I love this Dawn Chorus one.
Yeah.
When you procrastinate, what is your go-to?
TV.
And what do you like to watch on TV?
Right now I'm watching Eureka. It was a sci-fi show. It came out like early 2000s, mid 2000s, and I really freaking like it. I like happy TV. I don't watch things like I tried to watch Handmaid's Tale and I turned it off after 1 episode. I was like, nope, not doing it.
Gotcha. So this one might be specific for you because I haven't seen this one on other people's questions. And now that you say sci-fi, maybe it is. So the question is, if during a zombie apocalypse, would you rather be part of Men in Black type organization or Star Trek?
Oh, goodness. My husband would say Star Trek immediately. I kind of like Men in Black because of like all the high-tech tools. But I guess Star Trek had tools too.
Old school tools?
Yeah. I like the whole spy aspect of Men in Black.
Gotcha.
All right, here's another one. If you had to pick one store and you had unlimited financial access to it, what store would that be?
Oh, geez. A really, really good home decor store. Like maybe the Magnolia stores at the Silos. I know that's more than one store, but like where I could just really, a great furniture store, really quality furniture store. I don't know. Nice. I can't think of one particular, but that type.
Nice. And final question, what is your favorite junk food?
I really like jalapeno flavored chips. Potato chips. Over quarantine, I got really into green salsa. So like salsa verde with tomatillos. And the tortilla chips have to be thin, like razor paper thin. I don't like thick tortilla chips.
Well, thank you so much, Marissa, for being such a great sport and sharing authentically and sharing your upbringing and your influences. I know I learned a lot about you, and I will say Prescott, not Prescott, so I don't look like a sore thumb if I'm in Arizona and or talk about it. Well, we hope that you guys join us tomorrow as we interview Gordon Brewer, another one of your guys' fan favorites. And that was a very, very fun up close and personal. And Gordon actually talks about his life, 18 years as a funeral director. So he shares a really funny, we called it the Weekend at Bernie's story. So you don't want to miss that. So join us tomorrow for that. Marissa, thanks so much for joining us today and Startup Nation.
Yeah, always a pleasure and fun to talk about things from this side instead of always the business side.
Well, that's exactly why we do Up Close and Personal. So thank you. And Startup Nation, we hope that you guys join us tomorrow. And thanks for allowing us to inspire you from startup to mastery. Take care, everybody.
See you next time.
Thanks for joining us on The Private Practice Startup. Visit theprivatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, free trainings, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and so much more.